Welcome to the Native Diamond Podcast.
Oh, shit! What you waiting for?
Please don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, ring the bell. That way you're notified every time I drop a new episode of Native Diamond Podcast. What's going on, guys? Seth Mick here with Native Diamond Podcast. And today I have a very special guest. I have Grant Evans from the band Within Sight. They're a metalcore band from Vancouver, Washington. Thank you for joining us, Grant.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. You know, amongst other things, we're going to talk about Warped Tour and metalcore. But before we get into all that, I figured we would start off with some icebreaker questions. Just say the first thing that comes to mind. I'm going to ask you about 10 or 12 questions. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Amir or Attila?
Amir. Definitely.
Pierce the Veil or Sleeping with Sirens?
That's a hard one. Pierce the Veil. But I still love Sleeping with Sirens.
Nice. I don't know if you're a wrestling fan, but I threw this one in here. So old school wrestling, you picking WWF or WCW?
Probably WWF because I don't even know what the other one is.
Right. Any favorite wrestler?
I guess Hulk Hogan because I dressed up as him for Halloween a few years back.
Nice. Wall of Death or Circle Pit?
I love both of them. I'm going to go with the Circle Pit because some people get really hurt in a Wall of Death and don't want to go to your shows anymore.
Right. Wasn't there like a casualty? Bring Me the Horizon show? I think someone died from like a Wall of Death.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was, and that's probably not the only time that's ever happened.
Mm-hmm. That's
yeah.
crazy. All right, next one. Sick Breakdown or Sick Solo?
I can't choose, man. My band has both. I love a good breakdown.
Right on.
For sure.
All right. Ollie Sykes or Jeremy McKinnon?
Jeremy McKinnon, for sure.
As I Lay Dying or August Burns Red?
As I Lay Dying. They've been one of my favorites from the beginning.
Escape the Fate or Falling in Reverse?
Oh. I'm gonna say Falling in Reverse. I love both bands, but the new music that Ronnie Radke's been putting out is fire. It's I love the new metalcore sound with like adding some rap and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoy that as well. Horror movie or comedy?
Comedy, for sure.
Any favorites in particular?
Not really. I'm not a huge movie person, but I mean, if I have the choice, I will always choose a comedy movie. I don't even remember the last time I watched a horror movie, to be honest.
Right on. Marvel or DC Comics?
To be honest, I don't know. Because I have never really paid attention to what the difference is. I don't really know.
I understand. All right, my last question. What's the best candy bar?
Payday.
Oh, cool.
I don't know why, but I'm a sucker for peanuts and peanut butter, so Payday's where it's at.
Right on. No one ever says Payday, so that's an awesome answer.
Yeah.
But that pretty much wraps up my icebreakers. So that way you get to know a little bit about Grant, so you can dive into what he likes before you dive into the album or his albums.
Dope. Thank you.
So you had mentioned playing in Warped Tour before. Was that just like a one-time go-round?
Yeah, it was just a one-time deal because we played in a Battle of the Bands in Portland in 2015, or was it 16? It was a few years ago, and it was a cool opportunity. I think we battled against, I think, like 12 bands or something like that. It was 3 separate shows. Yeah, we won, and we got to play a single date at the Portland Warp Tour. It was cool though. Like, we got treated like one of the big bands. We even got to go to catering while we were there. You know, we were standing in line for catering with like all of your favorite bands, you know.
Hmm.
Got to talk to a lot of really cool bands and meet a lot of really cool people, and we played a show. We got slotted super early, so we didn't necessarily play in front of a lot of people. There was still like 10,000 people waiting in line on the other side of the fence.
Hmm.
So I like to tell people that we played in front of like 10,000 people.
Yeah. I mean, those lines are they're pretty fucking long. I mean, and you can hear
Yeah.
all the music while you're in line. So, yeah, I mean, definitely for sure, dude.
By the time we finished playing, there was still a huge line. We had made a ton of copies of our CD, and we just went over to the fence and we handed out like hundreds of CDs to random people that said they liked our music, and that was basically our promotion for the day.
I've heard it so many bands, like, I mean, big bands coming up. They said that they basically did the same thing as that. So, did you guys see a lot of return from that type of promotion?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a few years now, and I'm not sure how many of those fans that we have now came from that particular show. It's your goal, it's your mission to make an impact on at least a few people and hope that they stick around for life. I would assume that we still have a bunch of people from that show that still follow us.
Mm. So, like, at that time, who were some of the headliners from the festival?
I remember watching August Burns Red, Falling in Reverse, Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens. Attila was there, Icy Stars. Oh, Yellow Card was there. That was sick because that was like
Mhm.
right before they retired. I think that was like their last year on Warp Tour before they were gonna like play like one more tour, like a world tour or something. Pretty much all of Warp Tour was watching their stage, um, and that was near the end of the night, and that was really sick. And they closed with Ocean Avenue. It was
Oh
dope.
yeah, that's awesome. I think I caught that year, but it was in Charlotte, obviously, North Carolina.
Gotcha.
Um, do you have any crazy stories of touring or Warp Tour stories you would like to share?
So nothing too crazy from Warp Tour. One thing that was a little nerve wracking when we played the Warp Tour gig, we only had 2 weeks notice to like get enough merch and stuff for the show. Cause I wasn't going to spend a ton of money on extra merch if we didn't win,
Hmm.
but we did. Our shirts came in a day late. And I mean, we were slotted for like 11 a.m.
Hmm.
I had to have one of my friends go to the post office and pick up these shirts at like 9 a.m. or like 9 or 10 whenever he could and deliver them to me at Warp Tour. And we'd like had to get all of our merch set up like before we played at 11.
Oh shit.
So it was stressful, but we got it set up and we had a tent and everything, which was pretty cool. Besides that, I have a lot more stories about touring because we've done lots of touring. One of our craziest adventures would be our very first tour in 2016. We were very green. We didn't know what we were doing, and we decided to pay this booking company to book our tour for us. Someone that we knew in a different band, they said they had worked with them before and that they were legit, but they basically just took our money and ran. And
Jeez.
there's so many things that was wrong with that, and like from the beginning that I know now, but like for anyone in a band that's watching this, like never pay a booking person like until your shows or your tour is booked. I mean, that was our fault. We
Hmm.
had no idea what we were doing. We are just like, yeah, like here's $1,000, you know? And
Hmm.
it was like 3 months ahead of time. It was like 1 week before tour was supposed to start, and this guy is like ghosting us, and then we're just like, what do we do, you know? And we decided, you know, we all had time off work, and we were really excited to go on this tour, which was only supposed to be like 10 days or 8 shows or something like that. The plan was to play because we're in Washington, so we were going to go through Oregon and California and then play Vegas or something like that.
Hmm.
And we decided that we were just going to go. We had no plan whatsoever. we just decided to take the time and go on that tour, literally just drive and call venues ahead of time, basically just like beg for a slot, hop on a show, whatever we could. And we did it. We played
Shit.
7 shows in 8 days because we spent 2 days in Vegas, and then we drove home from there. We were just thinking like we're in this now. Like we have to really make connections on this tour. We wanted to grow as a band, and that's exactly what happened, because like there's like small bars and venues that we played on that tour that we still play to this day because we made those connections. If we wouldn't have gone, if we would have thrown in the towel, who knows like when the next tour would have been booked or whatever. But also it showed us, we proved to ourselves that we could do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
It was really exciting for us to make those connections, and the next tour we did, we made it bigger. We went further, but we still hit those same venues and use those connections that we had, and we've just continued to build our connections around the US. I think I want to tell one more story about touring,
Yeah, go for it.
because I know probably a lot of other bands could relate to this. We have had a string of bad luck with vehicles breaking down on tour,
Shit.
and that could be really detrimental to a band. I mean, it's expensive. You're stranded and you don't know when you're going to get home.
Mm-hmm.
I know that for smaller bands, it could really like make or break a band. It's a high stress situation. Somehow we have prevailed from late 2018 to the middle of 2019. I think we went through 5 vehicles.
Jeez.
But there's a couple that come to mind where the experience was pretty insane. We were on I-5 headed north, from California into Oregon, and I think we were like done with our tour and we were just like headed home. Traffic was like slowing. It was like kind of stop and go traffic, but we didn't really know why. It was a Sunday afternoon and we were like just south of Mount Shasta. There's not anything in Mount Shasta, so we're like, why is there traffic out here? And we found out that there was like construction up ahead, and they were like funneling all the traffic from like 4 lanes down to 1 lane. So we eventually got into like the 1 lane area, and traffic started to speed up a bit. And I was driving, and I think we were doing about 35 miles an hour. I looked down to grab my water bottle, and traffic ahead of me had stopped. And
Shit.
I rear-ended this like fifth wheel like trailer ahead of us, and it was a pretty slow impact, but because like we're hauling a 20-foot trailer, so we just
Right.
had a lot of momentum, and the trailer brakes never worked really good. So we ended up crashing into this guy. Like his truck and his trailer were actually just fine. The front end of our vehicle was like completely trashed.
Mm.
So the bumper of his trailer was stuck on the hood of our car, kind of like his trailer was on top of our truck,
Mm-hmm.
and we couldn't get them separated. The police showed up. So to make things worse, we were blocking traffic on I-5 because we were funneled down to 1 lane, and there was barricades on both sides of the freeway. We completely shut down I-5 for 3 hours,
Jesus.
and people were starting to get pissed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of police that showed up to make sure that people were staying in their cars, and because they were getting like crazy road rage, and they said that traffic was backed up like 22 miles. Um,
Man.
it was a pretty ridiculous experience, but we were basically stranded in Mount Shasta. The truck went to a wrecking yard, and we had to have someone come down with the truck to pick all of us up and the trailer. And that's where the bad luck started. And from there, we lost a few other vehicles, not because we crashed them, but because we toasted a transmission in Southern California. We actually finished that tour somehow. We got it fixed within 1 day. We only missed 2 shows, and we drove straight from Southern California to El Paso, Texas. And we caught up with the
Mm.
rest of the tour, and we still played like 12 more shows after that. Yeah, another Southern Oregon tour. We lost an engine in one of our trucks. Make sure you have insurance, people.
Right. So you guys have managed to basically be independent this whole time. Is
Yep.
there any takeaways you would like to, tell the audience?
It's extremely hard to grow being independent because it's completely up to you. You know, there's so many different factors and it's different for every single band out there, but you don't have that massive platform like a record label to help you push your music into places where you normally wouldn't be able to push your music. I think that's the hardest thing about being an independent band. But I have to say that it's probably more rewarding being an independent band because since everything is completely up to you, you have to work super hard to grow. You get to kind of plan your future on how you want to release your music, and you get to pick your artwork. You get to pick your tours, where you're going to go. I think it's super rewarding to book a tour and be super proud of it when that tour is successful, because not every tour is successful. But
Right.
if you work your ass off to do everything you possibly can to make it successful and you come home with money, it's just like you get this feeling of like, wow, like we did that together as a team. You know, we've continued to do that over the years and grow our business into what it is today. And I mean, we don't have that many followers, but we can still play tours that are like Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, and even Texas. And there's still people that show up to our shows that know who we are, that have been listening to us for a while. There was a few people in Montana. I mean, we've never even been to Montana. We went there once. We had a few people that were specifically there to see us that knew our entire discography.
Hmm.
And I mean, people always show up because there's a show, but it's one thing for people to show up and to tell you their story about how they discovered us and how long they've been listening to us.
Hmm.
And that's really rewarding when you picked their city just because you looked at your Spotify and saw that you had people listening to your music in that city and it worked.
Right on. I wanted to ask, what is the main source of revenue for your band? Is it the merch? Is it the streaming, Bandcamp?
It's going to be touring for sure.
Hmm.
Touring and merchandise. We can still come out with new merch when we're not touring, and people are always going to buy it. Like we always come home in the green on touring. I think there's only been 3 tours ever that like weren't profitable, and that would be the first 2 tours we ever did. Like we basically paid out of pocket to pay for our fuel, but we looked at that as an investment because we were growing the business and making connections.
Hmm.
And then there was another tour that we did a few years ago where it was a little bit rushed and we went too far. We spent too much money on fuel because we decided to do this tour that was like almost 7,000 miles. We were playing areas that we'd never been to before, and we weren't sure if we had fans in those areas. So a few of those shows were busts. But
Hmm.
if you think about it, if you're just getting started and say you just booked like your first tour, like your main goal would be to at least make connections, but I mean, possibly break even on like fuel and food. If you book your shows a few hours apart, so you're not driving like 10 hours each day, you could play a show on a Monday night and play in front of 10 people and sell 5 shirts at $20,
Right.
and you make $100. Maybe you have $100 guarantee from the bar. So like you take $200 and then you spend $100 on fuel. I know it's not big numbers, but for a small band that's just getting started, like it's something. The merchandise is where you're going to make the majority of your money. We could have like a $150 guarantee from the venue, and we could do 500 in merch. You really need to invest in like really good merch designs. People will pay, 20, $25 for a really badass t-shirt, but also you have to sell your performance. So you're not
Right.
going to sell shit on your merch if you're not a really charismatic band, if you're not up there really selling your performance. Then I mean,
Right. As far as merch is concerned, how do you gauge how many shirts to buy and sizes and stuff like that?
sure, we did it wrong for for the first year or two. I think we just ordered like the same amount of t-shirts
Hmm.
for each size, and don't ever do that. You kind of have to, you need to gauge who your fan base is.
Right.
So if you're like a death metal band and your genre of music is targeting which you can look at your Spotify analytics and your YouTube analytics, and it will tell you exactly like what your fan base is, if they're male, female, what the age range is. I'm using this as an example. So if your fan base is men that are between the ages of 26 and 38,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to assume that you're going to sell more large, extra large, even like 2X or 3X shirts, then you're going to sell like small and medium. You can kind of gauge it that way. And especially if you go with like a large or extra large, you're going to assume that like most males in that age range are going to be probably about, large between 2X. And so I would probably buy more XL or more large on purpose, way more large and extra large than any other shirts, because
Mm-hmm.
even if you run out of the 2X, or even if you run out of the like mediums, because you only bought like 5 or 10 of those shirts, if you purchase like 20 or 30 shirts of like the large and extra large, someone can buy the large if they ran out of the medium, or
Mm-hmm.
if you run out of the XL, someone might still buy the large. That's how I gauge us buying merch for tour. I'm looking at Spotify and YouTube analytics. So it's kind of like a pyramid to where large is at the top, and then it
Mm-hmm.
kind of trickles off from there. And I love buying, I'll always buy 3X shirts. Some people won't do that because it costs extra money to purchase a 3X, but
Mm-hmm.
it's it's really nice. It's really rewarding when there is a bigger person at your show and they get the courage to go up to you at the merch table and talk to you, and they ask you if you have a 3X. And when you have it, it completely makes their day, because a lot of bands don't carry bigger sizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just make a fan for life, basically.
Exactly.
No, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing all that, because, some of the listeners and most of my friends that listen to the show, they're all, DIY people. So, I just figured that would be very useful information. Cause you're kind of on a larger scale than, some of these bands who are starting off, obviously. I wanted to ask you, like, what is the current state of metalcore in your opinion? Since you've been in the scene for, a hot minute, do you think there's an incline or decline currently?
I feel like no matter what I say, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to agree, and there's going to be a lot of people that completely disagree.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I think that metalcore in its current state is on a very slow incline. But I only say very slow because it is just the very beginning of this snowball effect that I personally think is going to happen over the next 5 years. It might even be longer than that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've seen over the past 6 years that I've been doing this is, when my band got started, metalcore was already on the downhill. It was probably, so this was 2014.
Right.
Metalcore was probably at that point getting to its lowest point, and it basically fizzled out the last couple years. But what happened was, there was a bunch of metalcore bands that decided to do this like arena rock style.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it makes sense. I mean, their fan base, back in between like 2008 and 2012 or 2014, at that point, their fan base was all like in high school, basically, younger kids. I mean, they were wearing the neon colored like cartoon monster merch
Yeah.
and all that shit. That stuff was pretty dope. But uh, people grow up and their tastes, their likes change, and they were starting to see that their fan base was growing, and they wanted to grow with their fans. So generally, when people grow up, or they grow out of their music, some of the music they listen to, and so they wanted to go more mainstream. So if I could name a few bands uh, like Bullet for My Valentine, or Of Mice and Men, or
Hmm.
even I Dare to Remember,
Right.
they switched their sound so that they could try and market to the same people that they have been marketing to. And I do think that that was a tactic that worked. I mean, you can use Bring Me the Horizon as a good example as well.
Yeah, that's
They they
perfect example.
they have shifted their sound dramatically over the years, and they're still an insanely huge band. They might have lost a bunch of their metalcore fans or even their deathcore fans, but now they're playing like legit like pop rock music basically,
Yeah.
and but they've also gained so many other fans. So if you kind of use Bring Me the Horizon as a template because they were way ahead of the curve, all these metalcore bands decided to follow them, and now what I'm seeing is all these bands are starting to go back to their roots because the majority of their fans are not happy with the rock music that they're putting out. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of those bands are probably just tired of trying to cater to their fan base, and they just want to play music that they want to play, and they want to go back to their roots. Of Mice and Men, for example, I mean, they put out like two rock records, and then their last album was a metalcore record. Just using them as an example, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more bands following that template.
Hmm.
Sleeping with Sirens, they haven't been metalcore for years, and they just put out a record that is not necessarily completely metalcore, but there's a lot of metalcore elements in their music. And Kellen Quinn is screaming again, and he hasn't
Hmm.
done that in years. I mean, there's lots of bands that are starting to do this now, and I think it's going to it's going to ramp up to where metalcore is big again, because since none of the bigger bands are doing metalcore, they're going to start doing it again, and it's going to inspire younger artists,
Hmm.
and we're going to start to see more DIY metalcore bands pop up. Because over the past 6 years, for me being in the DIY scene, because like I book all of our shows and I have to communicate with all of the bands that we book,
Hmm.
uh, it's actually really hard to find metalcore bands.
Really.
And yeah, there's more deathcore, or like I guess I would just lump it all into deathcore. There's more deathcore bands and like rock bands than there are metalcore bands. At least that's how I feel when
Hmm.
we're booking a tour. We've decided to just stay on this track of we want to stay metalcore, and we're going to stay true to who we are because we enjoy playing that music, and we've done really well playing playing with other genres. I think because the DIY metalcore scene has um, been such a at a low point
Hmm.
that it's almost like what we're doing is fresh to a local scene, because there's no new metalcore bands popping up. I mean,
Right.
even in my town, in Vancouver, Washington, or Portland, Oregon, which isn't too far, there used to be a ton of metalcore bands when we first got started in
Hmm.
2014. And I mean, at least off the top of my head, there's probably only a few that are still actively playing.
Hmm.
Uh, but even metalcore bands from this area that are actively touring, there's only a select few.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that like the metalcore scene is being outsourced to like Germany and namely Australia. I'm seeing a lot of Australia like Polaris, and I can't think of any off the top, but I know there's a bunch of Australian bands.
Yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I think it's a revolving door, though. I think you're right. I think we're going to see like a rise of metalcore again, and namely because the Ghost Inside,
yeah,
they're going to come back strong, and they're already, dude. Their numbers are crazy off Aftermath, just that single.
That
So I think they're
single's amazing.
yeah, it's so good. And also, As I Lay Dying, they just released their last one,
Yes.
2019. So, like you said,
Yes.
and August Burns Red. I mean, all these like Dance Gavin Dance. But I guess what I'm seeing more of is like you said, yeah, there's a little bit more maturity, I guess. Like in Dance Gavin Dance, there's a lot more cleans than screaming, and Issues have kind of totally dumped their screaming completely.
Right. They
So
got rid of their screamer.
right. And
I forget his name, but I
mhm,
I miss I miss the old Issues, to be honest.
me too. I really enjoyed the old stuff. I mean, I like their new album. It's
Yeah,
progressive,
I do
but
too. It's just, I'm a sucker for, a good breakdown with some screams on it. And
mhm.
um I mean, even with their new stuff, their guitarist is doing a little bit of screaming, but um it's just not the same.
Mhm. Do you think like this younger audience, do you think they're more into cleans as opposed to screaming? Do you think that's maybe why there's a decline?
No. So I think that the majority of the younger kids are listening to rap and
Mhm.
like the trap hip hop stuff. Basically, when you think about the metalcore fan base that was from like 2008 to 2014, when
Mhm.
once all of those kids kind of like grew up, they probably started listening to more like rock, and that's where the metalcore bands shifted. But like, what bands fell into their place?
Mhm.
And that would be all of the rap trap stuff that I don't listen to. Um, I I don't think I could really even name any artists in that genre.
Probably like
I know
Ghost
there's
Main,
Ghostman, Travis Scott,
Bones.
um, Bones. I've heard of him.
Well, I think Lil Peep, but he's passed away. But
Yeah,
Juice
and
World.
I have done. I mean, I've done research on like who these people are. I just don't necessarily like listen to their music.
Mhm.
And um, I'm sure there's a lot of people that maybe listen to your podcast that also follow the Punk Rock MBA on YouTube.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah, me too. And so he's put out a couple really good episodes, and I would encourage everyone who listens to this to check out his channel
Hmm.
because he talks about the shift of metalcore, why it happened, and he really dissects it really well. But he also talks about all of the rap trap groups that have replaced metalcore, and there's actually a lot of rock and metal influences in their music.
Hmm.
And if you look up some like live shows from some of these artists, I mean, they're basically like screaming some of their sections to where it like that's totally influenced by metal or metalcore.
Hmm.
And it's a mixture between some rap music and some metalcore vocals. Even with some rap shows, there's like mosh pits happening
Hmm.
like during these heavy sections. That's what kids are into at the moment. But I do think what comes around goes around,
Hmm.
and I think metalcore will be back on top at some point. I just don't really have a timeline.
No, I think you're exactly right. When you said that last comment about the mosh pits, I can think of one example. There's a guy called NASCAR Allo, and he's from North Carolina. I think he claims Charlotte, but yeah, like he has mosh pits at his show, and he's like punk
Sick.
rap or something. He calls himself that. I think like people like that are gonna help people graduate to the heavier stuff.
Yes.
So also, I'm not really a Machine Gun Kelly fan, but I do know that song he did with Travis Barker is really like kicking off. I think it's Bloody Valentine, but I think like
Yeah.
that will definitely
There,
get people into this too.
there's another I don't know if it's the same song. I think it is, but there's another artist, like a rap artist that featured on that song. Yeah, I mean, I even enjoy that song. I'm not a
Mhm.
huge rap fan. I'm not a huge Machine Gun Kelly fan, but I've only recently kind of like dived into Machine Gun Kelly because he's been releasing these like quarantine rap videos, and I think
Mhm.
it's pretty like what he's doing is really unique and really cool. But I do think that he has a lot of rock influence, and he even plays guitar at his shows and in some of his like videos.
Mhm.
And I think that he's gonna, or he already has, like sparked another generation of like, I don't know, rock, rap, maybe like we're going to see a full circle of like new metal from the early 2000s. Maybe that is going to come back first before metalcore gets like super big again.
Dude, that's what I'm calling. So I'm going ahead. I'm calling it right now. It's gonna be new metalcore. It's gonna be like I don't know if you ever heard of Dropout Kings.
Yeah, I've heard
Um,
of them.
yeah, like the same thing. Like it's or like the new Roddy Radke song, "Popular Monster."
Yes. Yes.
Just the rap and the heaviness of metalcore, deathcore. I think that's exactly
Absolutely.
right. I think that's where it's going for sure.
Yes. Especially so it wasn't Popular Monster. I think the song is called Drugs.
Drugs, yeah, drugs.
It features Corey Taylor from Slipknot,
Okay, I didn't know he was on there.
and I might be wrong, but it's one of his new singles he put out recently.
Hmm.
But it features Corey Taylor, and it's just got this like crazy heavy breakdown and like screaming from Corey Taylor.
Hmm.
And I definitely think that that's going to be influencing like a lot of rappers, and we're probably going to see over the next like 5 years,
Hmm.
rappers are probably going to get like heavier and maybe even graduate to more metalcore stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Like another guy I can think of, Scar Lord. He was on tour with Bring Me the Horizon, and he does like the trap metal stuff.
Okay,
Um, Also Hyra.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, Scar Lord's pretty cool actually. I think he actually has hardcore metal roots, so shout out to him. And Hyra the Hero, he's another one. He kind of sounds like Rage Against the Machine. Um,
Okay,
I'll throw that out there as well. He's on tour. He was supposed to be on tour with Asking Alexandria, um, and Falling
sick,
in Reverse. So yeah,
nice.
I'm noticing that. Yeah, a lot of these metalcore guys, they're bringing in a lot of these like trap metal guys because they're calling it now. They can see like that's the next wave.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I'm glad that you shouted out Punk Rock NBA because actually, Finn is like the main reason I started my own podcast because I was just like, you
Oh,
know what?
sick.
Like he said something and I was like, fuck that. I can do this. And the reason I'm doing it is because I feel like I wanted to bring like a younger representation to the metal scene, someone that people our age can relate to because I'm 29 years old. You said you were 27.
Yeah,
So, I just wanted to bring a younger representation. All I see is 40 and 50-year-olds. I'm not being ageist or ageism or whatever, but
yeah,
there is not a younger representation in my opinion.
yeah. It's definitely a lot of people our age. Uh,
Mhm.
but occasionally there happens to be, some younger kids at our shows. When you make that connection with them and like you notice that, you get a bunch of new like followers and whatnot, and you notice that they're younger kids, it's really cool to see, some younger kids that are still listening to metalcore. It's really exciting.
Mhm. What's the newest album that you've checked out lately?
Um, that would be probably the new Amity Affliction or August Burns Red.
Mhm.
Oh, also Trivium.
Oh, dude, I've
Uh,
been killing Trivium lately.
dude, the new Trivium record is savage.
Yes.
Um, that one, and I'm also the August Burns Red album. I love August Burns Red. Their music is a little sporadic, and so like sometimes I have to like listen to 5 songs and take a break
Mhm.
because they're like so technical. Like I really enjoy their music, but for me to like really like enjoy an entire album, I feel like I would need to like kind of mix it up with some other music as well.
Mhm.
And then the Amity Affliction record is pretty good. They decided to go back to their metalcore roots because they did the rock thing for like 2 albums.
Yeah, past two have
And
been not great.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
But see, they're part of that trend now. They're starting to go back to the metalcore stuff. And I even heard an interview with Joel saying that he thinks they went a little bit too far on their last record,
Mhm.
and they're excited to like scream again.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that, man, you have to stick to your roots a little bit because I mean that's kind of what got you there, in my opinion. I
Right.
mean, I went straight too far from it, but at least stay in the ballpark.
I just think you can't completely abandon your fans.
Hmm.
So if you're a metalcore band and you decide to put out a rock album, I mean, just be prepared to get some kickback.
Yeah.
And I mean, you might gain some new fans, but I mean, your original fans probably aren't going to be too happy.
No, we're seeing that with Asking Alexandria. In my opinion, if you're gonna kind of change and go that far left field, I mean, I would change the name of the band. I mean, it's not a big issue that you're playing it. Just it's kind of hard to put it in the same discography, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I just think that they tried to do what Bring Me the Horizon did,
Hmm.
but I don't think they did a very good job of it, and they're really paying for it right now because, I mean, I personally don't know anyone in the metalcore scene that like thoroughly enjoys their new music. They
Hmm.
might listen to it just because they're nostalgic with the band, but I don't enjoy their new music, and that really sucks because I love that band. I grew up listening to that band,
Same.
and they have just turned into something that doesn't really feel authentic anymore.
No, I totally agree. The self-titled, I was actually very hopeful with that, and I was like, okay, I can see it, but no, they totally missed me with this last one, dude. I'm not feeling this stuff that they're putting out,
Yeah,
or not the
same.
last one, but these last singles they've been putting out, rather.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna kind of start wrapping it up here, but anything that you would change about the metal community? Any specific pet peeves?
I don't think so, dude. I mean, I love that the community is like is a really like it's a really tight community because like when you hop on social media and you know that you have a bunch of like metalcore fans on like that follow you or that you're friends with on Facebook and and like you post something that's like music related. I
Mhm.
love that it it opens a discussion and you get a lot of people that like want to talk about it and they are commenting and that's what I love about the community on social media, that they're just so active on social media, and that's really cool. I guess if there was one thing that I would change, this isn't for everyone. I mean, it's just only maybe like a few select instances that this happened where I might be talking about a band, a metalcore band with someone, or posted about it, and they completely just like trashed the band
Mhm.
because maybe they didn't like the last single that they put out. For example, like me and you were just talking about Asking Alexandria, and
Mhm.
like we weren't trashing the band. We were just saying that we don't like their newer music. But
Right.
I mean, still to this day, I will go back. I will listen to their older music and actually listen to the majority of their discography.
Mhm.
Um, but some people just feel really strongly about their personal opinions on music in the metal community. They just won't be mindful about things that they say that are going to like just completely destroy another band if they were to read it. And that's on the local level. It's on like the medium touring scale level. It's at the top too. So, I mean, you're never going to escape that, but I just wish that metalcore fans or metal fans would be just a little more open to
Mhm.
where music is headed. And Falling in Reverse, for example, you know, the music they've been putting out has like more rapping in it, but they still have like sick breakdowns. They got guitar solos.
Mhm.
Their choruses are still like metalcore, like super catchy, but I know a lot of people that just despise the band because of what they're doing, but also maybe just they don't like Ronnie Radke.
Yeah.
Um, I would just love to see people just keeping an open mind. You don't have to like the vocalist or a person in the band, but think about the other people in the band that like you would be supporting if you bought their record or went to a show.
Mhm.
And also, R.I.P. Derek from
Oh
Falling
yeah.
in Reverse.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen them play a couple times. I never got to meet the guy, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the music that he's contributed to.
Right. And I'm not trying to be insensitive or whatever, but like, I think in his passing, a lot of people are actually going to check out Falling in Reverse now. In
I
light of that
agree.
tragedy.
I agree. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of social media posts about Derek, and I do think that even though he's not going to see it, I think that Falling in Reverse is going to be continue to grow, and they're probably headed straight for the top
Mhm.
because of the innovative music that they're putting out. It's too bad he's not going to experience that, but he really has created a legacy for the band.
Yeah, definitely. But you're right. I think they're gonna kind of lead the charge there with this scene right now. My last question for you is, now that Warped Tour is kind of done, it might come back, who knows? But what platform do you see for like younger people to get into bands they don't know about? Because I know Warped Tour, that was basically it for me. But
Yeah. Um, to be honest, I think there isn't one. And I
mm,
think that's what's really scary. I mean, there's social media, but social media is it's so throttled back nowadays.
mm-hmm,
This was something else I actually wanted to bring up earlier.
mm-hmm,
I think that because social media is so throttled and you have to pay to get any sort of a post or new music or anything in front of the majority of your fans that even follow your page,
mm-hmm,
um, not every band has the knowledge or even has the capital to boost their posts and reach the correct people. I think that we're going to also see a turn in the market with bands getting signed to record labels again,
mm-hmm,
because record labels have a massive platform and they have the capital to market new music that's coming out. They can boost posts or they can create ads on social media, and they can afford the capital to basically make or break a band. Who knows, like my band, with we might be searching for a label within the next year or something like that,
mm-hmm.
specifically because of the way the market has changed. We've been DIY for a long time. We've proven that we can do it ourselves, and we've been profitable on touring and stuff, but we do want to take it to the next level. And as for your question goes, I have heard a rumor that Franz from Attila
Mm-hmm.
was he was talking on Twitter recently about how he wanted to purchase the Warped Tour name, and he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to actually like put it together again. And I don't know if he was just blowing smoke up our asses or whatever, but
Right.
like I really do think that someone with the capital and with the knowledge that Kevin Lyman had
Mm-hmm.
uh, needs to do something like Warped Tour again.
Definitely.
There's festivals that happen all over the United States, and that's pretty cool. You can go to those. That's like 3 days long, but tickets are like, I think they're like in between like $200 and $400. I
Yeah.
mean, like what kid is gonna have that type of money, or have his parents or her parents pay for that ticket when they could have gone to Warp Tour and paid $35 for a ticket, or however much it was,
Mm-hmm.
and still get the same experience.
Yeah. And in one day, not a whole weekend.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, that it the since Warp Tour ended, I think definitely that has contributed to the metalcore scene completely just like plummeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's going to be another Warp Tour again, but with or without it, I still think metalcore is going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
But if something like Warp Tour did come back, then absolutely, um, maybe we'll see Warp Tour come back at the same time that metalcore um, climbs the charts again, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe someone will see the opportunity to ride that wave and make Warp Tour happen again.
All right, cool. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the show. I was just gonna leave. You have any final thoughts that you want to leave the viewers with? Anything you want to say about your band? Just anything in general before we head out?
Yeah, sure. So you can find my band Within Sight anywhere. We primarily post on Facebook and Instagram. We're not really a Twitter band, but we post quite often, and we're always releasing new content and new videos, new music.
Mm-hmm.
Check out our Spotify. We just released a new single called Quicksand, which is our probably our favorite work, and we're headed in this metalcore direction of kind of like a mixture between like Wage War, Bullet for My Valentine, and A Day to Remember.
Mm-hmm.
And we're releasing 6 new singles coming out this year. and we're not going to do an album this year. We're just going to do singles. And so I think every 6 to 8 weeks we have a new single coming out. So hit that follow button on Spotify or whatever, and like you'll be seeing new content from us.
All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot. So that was Grant Evans from the band Within Sight. For fans of Metallica, Lamb of God, Trivium, Day to Remember, August Burns Red, and there's a bunch to name. So thanks, Grant. You've been great on the show. I really appreciate your
Thank
time,
you.
dude. And to all the people who are listening, go check out Within Sight. Hopefully we'll see you again on the podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much. Well, that pretty much does it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video and subscribe. That way you don't miss a new episode of Native Diamond Podcast. And until I see you guys on a future video, shine on.